right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it's the off season. So what better time? Hey, Fresh, it's time to interview. So I'm always joined by my co-host, Fresh, and we have a very special guest for you. We have Coach Jeff McDaniels from Eastern Washington University. He is the wide receivers coach over there at EWU. And folks, if you don't know about EWU, hey, every time you turn on ESPN and you see that big red field, not the Boise Blue, that big red field, that's Eastern Washington University down there. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, man, I appreciate it. I'm fired up. Get a little bit of time away from talking some X's and O's and recruiting right now, and have heard great things about what you guys are doing, so I'm fired up to have a chance to talk to you guys.
Absolutely.
Glad to have you on.
So Coach, just to talk to us a little bit about, how did you get to a place like Cheney, Washington and Eastern Washington University, online? And again, this is always fun. We get to check like what's true on the internet that we found about you. Played at Davidson, and then you graduate 2014, and talk to us a little bit how your career took off from there.
Yeah, so I went to I would like to think a decently high academic school, and I was the only guy that didn't want to go make a ton of money and go into the finance sector and go into the commercial real estate deal. And so while all my buddies were big internships and those kind of things in the summer, I was like, I want to coach ball when I finish. And so, heck, my career in a sense almost started when I was playing. I would spend the summers going around the country, around the East Coast, and volunteering at different camps and just trying to meet people. Not doing any recruiting for Davidson, just trying to meet people. And through all the different connections and one-offs and things like that, Ron Whitcomb was the offensive coordinator at Old Dominion University, and they were transitioning from being an FCS school, and they were going into Conference USA. They had Taylor Heineke, who had just won the Walter Payton Award, and so I had the chance to start my career there. And I had played receiver, didn't know anything about playing quarterback until I'm sitting in a room with Coach Whitcomb, who played quarterback himself at Maine, and then sitting there with a Walter Payton Award winner. So I was having to ask him some of the stuff early on in my career, but was there with Coach Wilder, who just recently got the Tennessee State or the Tennessee Tech head job. But so I was there for a year, loved it, was around Taylor and then Zach Pascal, who played in the 2023 Super Bowl for the Eagles and is now playing in Arizona. So was very blessed and fortunate to hit the ground running. And then from there, it kind of started the generic grind your way up from being a graduate assistant. So I had the chance to go to Texas State University down there in San Marcos. Absolutely loved my 2 years there and was thrown into the fire in the sense of after year one, had our head coach retire. So I'm going through a coaching change 2 years into my career. I don't know what the heck's going on. Was fortunate enough that Everett Withers retained me there. My first year was with Dennis Francione, and I was around a guy, Brad Bedell, who kind of gets tied in later into my story, but was with the kind of all the offensive skill guys my first year. And then my second year was really just the receivers. And then my first taste of special teams as well. And then from there went back to my alma mater. So I was back at Davidson. I was loving life. I'm on Lake Norman. I'm coaching actually on the defensive side of the ball. I was coaching the corners, which was a new learning experience for me, being on defense. But coached for the guy that I played under my senior year, Paul Nichols, and learned a bunch. Thought I was going to be at Davidson for a long time. And then Brad Bedell, who had been the offensive line coach at Texas State, he's the O-line coach in Boise, Idaho. And he calls me one day in the spring and he says, hey, we've got a GA spot here. I know you're full-time FCS and all that kind of stuff, but do you want to come back on offense and learn from this staff and be a part of something really special at Boise? And that was an opportunity I couldn't turn down. Had never been to Boise. I thought French fries, potatoes, and the blue field. And so I packed everything up and drove. It was 37 hours from Charlotte to Boise. Did it in 3 or 4 days. And then my first taste of Boise, Idaho, 6 days after getting there, COVID. So I'm like, okay, my family's on the East Coast. I just moved out here. I moved in with 2 other GAs. I don't know them, and now we're not allowed to go into the office. And so that was a interesting spring into the summer. But no, I absolutely love my year in Boise. And I've been very fortunate to be around a lot of really smart coaches and a lot of guys that have taken care of me. So whether it was Coach Harsin, who I'll get to, Eric Keesaw is one of my biggest mentors, was the offensive coordinator there. Matt Miller's the receivers coach there, and Brad Bedell, and then Jeff Schmedding and Spencer Danielson, who's the head guy there. So I'm on this unbelievable staff. We lose a conference championship, unfortunately, to San Jose State. I fly back home to Washington, D.C. I get off the plane, I refresh Twitter, and I get some text, and Harsh is going down to Auburn. And so I'm like, okay, like this is interesting. This is interesting. Thought I had a good relationship with Coach Harsh, and a couple days later I get the opportunity to go down there with a couple other of the Boise guys, and life down there was interesting, and there was some public ups and downs while we were down there. But again, spoiled as a young coach, because I walk into the building as a GA my first year, and then I became the senior offensive analyst my second year. But I walk in, the offensive coordinator is Mike Bobo, who's now the offensive coordinator at Georgia. The offensive line coach is Will Friend, who's about as SEC as it gets, who's now the OC at Western Kentucky. Cadillac Williams is the running backs coach, and Cornelius Williams, and Derek Mason's the DC. And so, I just tried to be a sponge every day I would come into the building, specifically working with the receivers and the quarterbacks the first year. And then year two, we have some coaching changes and things like that. And so some different new faces. Ike Hilliard was the guy that I kind of learned from. He was the receivers coach. And you want to talk about learning from a guy who was a All-American, one of the best to ever do it at Florida, and then had coached for the Commanders, the Bills, the Steelers was where he was most recently coming from. And so I worked under him my second year there. And again, now it's Jeff Schmedding, who's now at Washington State, and it's this unbelievable group of guys that I was able to learn from there. Thought when Coach Freeze came in that I would want to continue to stay down there. But to make a really long story, kind of wrap all the way around to how I ended up here was, so during my time at Auburn and at Boise, I had kind of, there were some people on the staff that he either played or coached at Eastern. And so my first year at Auburn, Bodie Reeder was a former offensive coordinator here. He's now the offensive coordinator at Middle Tennessee. Jeff Schmedding, who I was with at Boise, was with at Auburn. He was the defensive coordinator here. J.C. Sherritt was an All-American at Eastern, was one of the other analysts at Auburn. Danny McDonald was a guy that was an analyst there who actually just recently joined our staff, but had been an analyst at Eastern. So all these Eastern ties that I had known. And so everybody knows Cooper Kupp and the Redfield, and that was kind of all I had known at the time. But then when this job came open, I knocked down every door I possibly could. I wore out Coach Best with people calling and stuff like that because of the tradition and the legacy of the program, of the offense, and then specifically of the receiver room. I think this is a very unique FCS job in the sense that a lot of people know Eastern Washington because of Coop, because of Kendrick Bourne in New England, and because of the red turf. And so it was a really unique opportunity. I had heard such good things. And so that's my long-winded answer of how I got to Cheney, and have been here now literally 366 days. So enjoying finishing year one out here on the red.
Man, that right there is just a perfect story of most coaches just think these guys hit it big right off the bat. They kind of just end up on third base. But the journey of place to place, the connections you make, you sort of pick and pull from different coaches, different styles, and it gives you that connection and that growth that people don't understand, that coaches are grinding 24/7 and they're building those connections and growing their model of who they want to be and how they want to develop players.
Yeah, I didn't play in the NFL, wasn't blessed to have that, and didn't have some of those things on the resume. So it was sleeping in the office at Texas State and in Boise at times. And I kind of feel like I've learned through a lot of different, I had been so blessed and so fortunate to be around some of the guys that I've learned from, head coach wise, coordinator wise, heck, the other side of the ball. But yeah, what was not one of those guys that was born on third base or with a silver spoon or anything like that. But I've loved every step of the way. I think some of the best relationships I have are with the other graduate assistants and the other analysts that are in the fire. And you're sleeping 2 hours a day, half the week during the season, and then there is no off season and everything like that. But would not have wanted my career path to be anything else. I like having been FCS non-scholarship, now at the FCS level, group of five, and then having the chance to be down there in the SEC. Hopefully gives me a unique perspective on some different things that I try to pull from. But I am the first one to say I am the most blessed to have been around the guys that have helped take care of me. And it's kind of nice when I can pick up the phone and call some guys and lean on some guys that are coaching at some different spots and stuff like that. And then if I'm trying to talk to Efton Chisholm or some of our guys, I'm like, hey, man, like the Falcons receivers coach is saying this is exactly how he's doing it. That's who I just worked for. And maybe it hits home a little bit more with our guys just with some of the experiences that I've had.
So let me ask you this question, especially when you're going through this coaching career and you start off on the offensive side of the football, and then all of a sudden you're coaching defensive backs and you're thrown on defensive side of the ball. What's that type of transition like as a coach? Because we see it as kids come in as a recruit and they may have that athlete label on them as a recruit, or they're a tight end and they get flipped over to linebacker or what have you. What's that like from the coaching perspective?
It's almost like learning a new language. Like literally, like as an offensive coach, you're drawing up, plays on a whiteboard and everything's facing up, like you're moving down the field. And so then I look like the crazy guy my first day in the defensive staff meetings. I start to draw it like that, and the defensive coaches are like, no. We draw the defensive line at the top. The defense is at the bottom. It's the offensive guys working from the top down, and you're like, oh boy, like this is different. And so there was a lot of technical things that I had to learn from. I had a really good relationship. So the head coach that hired me, Paul Nichols, was my head coach my senior year at Davidson. So there was a little bit of that grace period. He was a defensive backs guy by trait. But then the safeties coach at the time actually is in the process of joining an NFL team that I'm not allowed if he has publicly been announced yet, but a guy that will be coaching the secondary in the NFL. So, man, again, spoiled from the start that, I was like living with Justin Hood, who was the safeties coach at the time at Davidson, who has spent the last handful of years with the Green Bay Packers, but I'm asking him everything. And the only thing that I could bring into those meetings with the players early on was, hey guys, I'm gonna play devil's advocate, and I'm gonna tell you everything that receiver is thinking, how a quarterback's reading it, and then sitting in the staff meetings, it was kind of my job to try to poke holes in what we were doing defensively and just taking it from an offensive point of view. But it is like learning a foreign language because I'm used to going forward. I'm used to, running with the ball in our hands. And now it's like, no, you cover this big space and you're backpedaling and doing all those kind of things. So, it's not as easy as, I don't know if anybody would say it's ever easy. It is difficult, but I think it was a great learning experience for me because now for 3 years I sat in defensive meetings. This is how we want to do it. Hey, this receiver lines up like this. This running back's giving this, key away. The left guard's doing this. And so I was able to sit there, and in my mind, I was like, man, I truly hope I end up back on offense at some point. And so I'm going to try to learn all these things so that if I'm ever sitting in this position, I now kind of have it on both sides. Hey, corners are going to think certain things because of this, or, safeties are key in this, or coordinators are picking up on these things. So I tried to always play the devil's advocate in the room, but it was a really good, I wouldn't trade that learning experience for the world. I would tell young coaches, go coach on the other side of the ball, high school, middle school, college, NAI, whatever level, because you're going to have a bigger appreciation for your craft. And then when you get back on the side of the ball you want to coach at, now the littlest things you do are a big deal on the other side of the ball that you would have taken for granted. So I loved my time on defense, but I'm glad that I'm back on offense now.
Nice.
So you've had multiple stops, and people kind of like it, FCS you mentioned, non-scholarship, scholarship, group of five, SEC. What are the similarities among those different levels of football? And then what are some of the obvious, differences? We already know the money's gonna be a big factor, but where do you sort of see the similarities and differences of all the different stops and how they kind of apply?
I think, and I've been fortunate to be in some good programs along the way. The care factor and the work that these guys put in there may be minor differences, but the guys at Davidson, non-scholarship loved football as much as Tank Bigsby and Bo Nix did at Auburn. Now, Tank and Bo were blessed to do things athletically that maybe some of the guys, obviously, Davidson can't do, but it's the care factor, and it is the grind. Like our receivers here, I mean, I showed up and they are doing walkthroughs by themselves on Saturdays. Like these guys love football, and like even guys at Eastern understand like, hey, just because I'm not wearing a Power 5 logo, well, Cooper Kupp came from here and is having a pretty darn good career. So they understand their goals can be reached from wherever they come from. But the work ethic, the drive, and even like the football intelligence of the guys, like these guys, whether it's at Davidson or at here and just interacting with different staffs and stuff like that, like the IQ is there. It just so happens that a guy is a step faster at a different school or 20 pounds bigger at a different school. I think, that some of those physical traits, and I think the coaching and the schemes that the guys are in are very similar. I think there's really good FCS coaching across the country, which is why you're starting to see more and more FCS coordinators go into the Power 5 level. And it's why there can be some of those bigger jumps, is because there's really smart coaches that maybe just haven't gotten the break that they've wanted. So these players are around like legit schemes that are being run on, Saturday nights when there's 100,000 people watching some of the big ones. It's the same plays that are being run on the red here on Saturdays. Those would be two of the bigger similarities between the different levels. And I think that, yeah, especially now, one of the biggest differences from my time like at Auburn or even at Boise State to some of the different FCS levels is the amount of maybe non-football influences that go on for the staffs and then for the players. Because when we sit down in our receiver meetings here, we're not starting with, well, this NIL is getting presented to me, and man, Subway's going to pay me $75,000 to do this, and Bojangles is going to come to the house to shoot a commercial. That's not what we're talking about at Davidson or Eastern. And there's good and bad to some of those differences, but yeah, the NIL piece is definitely the biggest thing as it continues to go. And probably the pressure day to day is a little bit different, because there's a lot of money that's involved at the SEC level or at Boise State, and so maybe certain changes happen faster at the bigger schools, whether it's coaching changes, it's depth chart changes, it's things like that. But some of the non-football factors are more at play in a day-to-day basis at the different levels. And then recruiting, the monster of recruiting, is massively different at Auburn as it is to Davidson or Eastern just here. Because, man, at Auburn, if you don't know the 14-year-old freshman on the other side of the state that just had a really good Pop Warner season, you're behind. Whereas at an FCS school, you typically start to dive into that kid when he finishes kind of a little bit during his junior fall. But then like now, FCS schools across the country start to sink their teeth into juniors that are going to become seniors. This is kind of the time that you really start to sink your teeth into it. You don't need to know about the 8th grade quarterback from, Dallas, Texas, like you would have to, right. Coach Bobo and like Keese would have to know at Auburn. Like, the years in advance piece of the recruiting is a little bit different. The recruiting piece, the NIL piece is different. That would be like that's going to be the biggest difference. Might be really obvious, but it is a difference day to day.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, because it can be obvious hearing exact details of where those differences are, because people will sort of think like football, or you're this level, or you're that level. There's no way you can compete. But in the end, it is football, and if players can play, they can develop later on. Things sort of happen from that perspective.
Coach, I got a question for you on that. You brought up like the recruiting, the NIL thing. Talk a little bit about that. Like you're at being at an FCS school, you go into a living room, you go into a coach's office at a local high school. I've had my lucky chance where I've gotten to be in some D1 coaches in the same room with them talking about players. This is before the true age of NIL. But what is that like now for a recruiter? What is that like to sit down with that kid? Do the kids broker that conversation is, I know that there's collectives outside that they don't directly come from the university, but the collectives kind of have the informed, like, we're ready to do this for kids that come in, and what is that conversation like for kids in this day and age?
Yeah, it's drastically different than it even was 5 years ago, because now you are even starting to see FCS low group of five guys at least wanting information about what NILs do you have set up at a place like Eastern. What kind of financial compensation packages are going to be for me? Is there going to be any kind of a little extra to get you to a place? And heck, 5 years ago, like that didn't exist at the FCS level, and like that's starting to become a little piece of it. And so it's a lot of figuring out if a guy wants to be recruited or if he wants to play football. And like that's kind of a big difference, because now the recruiting process is on such a public platform when it comes to Twitter and Instagram and 247 and Rivals and all those kind of things. And so you have to try to really figure out which kid is like all about ball, which kid's not going to be impacted if the NIL package is a little bit less at one school than it is at another school. Is he more invested in his development at the school? Does he trust the coaching staff? Does he trust the production level that's come out of the school? I was not on the road recruiting when I was at Auburn, but obviously, we had these conversations and we go over every meeting there. And yeah, there's certain recruiting experiences or stories that would blow your mind about it. Is the kid's not talking, it's just mom and dad talking, and they say school X said here's $200,000 and you guys either match it or we can just eat dinner and you guys can fly back to wherever. And so it is crazy how football to some has become a smaller piece of it, and it's the monetary piece for some recruits. So it's tough navigating those pieces. But I think that you're going to continue to see the more productive players are the ones that, yes, there's going to be external factors in play and people are going to want to pull you in different directions. Who are the guys that can still focus on the football part of it? And who is going to make a good decision on where they can develop, not where they're going to get a quick paycheck or a bigger paycheck? And we try to, and a lot of it is like educating the families and the kids in the process. Like, hey, we might not be able to give you as big of an NIL deal, but did you watch the Super Bowl when the Rams played the Bengals? Like, that was our guy, was the Super Bowl MVP in that game. The Triple Crown winner is an Eastern Washington guy that year. So if we don't have the NIL package that matches somebody else, we're talking about developing you to hopefully have a really good college career, give you a chance to play on Sundays. It might not be financially the same as another school, but what's what you're looking for, the short-term fix, or do you want to be developed at a place? So yeah, it goes on and on. I mean, there's so many pieces to it, and you talk to 7-on-7 coaches. You might be talking to an assistant at the high school. You might talk to the high school head coach. There's a lot of people in a student athlete's ear now, when 5, 6, 10 years ago, there might have only been like one person in their ear. Because now their buddy at the high school is like, well, I read on Twitter that this other receiver, like, there's this car dealership that's going to give him a car. And then their other buddy's saying, hey, I heard that this guy got this NIL package. And so there's so many things going on in a kid's head that it does make the recruiting process tough on like their end of it. And then it makes it hard on the coaching staff, because now you're having to talk to a lot of different people about a lot of different things that might not be the kid's plan at Davidson, at Eastern Washington. It's like, well, no, we're working on these NIL things, this, that, and the other. So as gray of an answer as that is to you guys, is kind of the continued piece for the kids' perspective and then for our perspective as well.
Let me ask just a quick follow-up to that. I love the fact that you say that you guys spend time to educate the kids on what exactly NIL is and what is it allowed to do, because I think that is one of the biggest problems that runs into it. It's not about, I've never had an issue with paying kids, especially when other people profit off of your name, image, and likeness. By all means, that is your name, image, and likeness. You should be able to profit off of that.
Right.
But being able to understand what that truly means, and again, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get a much different package than a kid playing over there. How are the kids receptive to that education? Is it like, nah, you're just trying to tell me this?
So I think you get both. I think you do get some guys that are understanding of it, and then some guys that are like, well, my buddy's going to school X, Y, and Z in the Mountain West. Or when we were at Boise, it's, hey, this is kind of right when the NIL was starting to blow up, and we'd be recruiting a kid at Boise State, and but there's a Pac-12 school that can offer this right now, and we're like, well, is that a 1-year deal, or is that kind of supposed to be a 4-year renewal while you're there? Is there production things that you have to hit? Because as we kept learning more about the NIL at Boise State and at Auburn under Coach Harsh, there was so many different pieces and all these different collectives. They might have things that you have to hit production wise, or else that it's not a while I'm at school X, Y, and Z. It's not a 4-year deal. Sometimes it is a, hey, you have to get this amount. You have to play this amount of snaps. It's built almost like NFL contracts in a sense. For some of the pieces, which some guys don't understand. Some families don't understand. High school coaches are learning just like we are. I'm not going to sit here and say all college coaches know all of it, because it keeps changing by the day. And so you just have to educate them, and then you have to explain to them hey, yes, they might have a little bit better NIL deal, but have they ever produced a, drafted offensive lineman at, the other school? Because you might be getting $10,000 a year, but we're the other school in the conference and we've produced these All-Americans, or we've won, this amount of games. And so making sure that a guy doesn't get infatuated with a number right away, as opposed to maybe what another school can offer in the long run, or the degree that you're going to get at one school compared to the other one. That was something that, that I've heard through some of the higher academic schools that are in this whole deal, is that sometimes they can't match the price tag of an NIL, but a high academic school's degree is going to be a heck of a lot more for you in the long run than taking a quick check from somebody. So it's an ever-going deal. We continue to learn more about it, and the collectives being involved, and we as coaches cannot, I cannot call up a Ford dealership in Spokane and say, hey, we've got these 2 receivers. Can you, we don't broker the deals and things like that. That's all the kids. And sometimes you sit in a 16, 17-year-old's home with mom and dad, and they're like, what deal are you going to get? Well, we're not allowed to be the broker. We're not allowed to be the agent when it comes to certain things. The collective can do that at certain schools. So it's very different school to school. A little wild, wild west-ish, which is why you continue to hear stories about certain schools doing certain things. Is that allowed? I don't really know, because all the rules aren't in place because it's so brand new. And so it continues to be this, we're kind of weaving through it. And now, especially with some of the NCAA stuff with a couple specific schools that thought the NCAA had them down for something, but then the courts are saying something else. And so you're like, holy cow, it's a little wild, wild west for them and for us as well.
Right.
Well, now that we're getting into spring practice, really the season's starting to kind of at the very beginning right now. Most people look at in season, week to week, you're doing install for game plan, preparing for a team or opponent coming up, or even, fall camp, you're really getting geared up for the year. As a coach, what do you take spring practice to be? How do you sort of orchestrate? How does the entire coaching staff use that? Is it install? Is it player development? Is it kind of both? How is that done from a coaching perspective?
I think the biggest thing is to have a good balance of both, and it's going to be very different position to position on the same team. So if we have a returning All-American, he doesn't need as many snaps in the spring as some of the younger guys. We've got some older guys that have played a lot of snaps. There's certain things that we might really have them hit on situationally in the spring, but it's a balance of your core offense, defense, and special teams installs and your philosophy but the player development part is always going to trump it. So even if a guy's going to take less reps in the wide receiver individual drills, we're going to try to focus on every little piece that we can with him. Because for us, player development never stops. I mean, it is in the weight room with the guys from January to March, and then for us, spring ball, the month of April, and then they're back in the weight room and they're doing player run practices. I think that's something that maybe the public doesn't understand, like how much these guys go through. Like here at Eastern, our players run their own walkthroughs on the weekends. No coaches didn't set it up. Coaches aren't there. Coaches weren't even the ones that wanted to get that started. But it was the older guys on the team that do that, and the film sessions, they can do some stuff with us. There's a certain amount of hours NCAA-wise that we can meet with them and be with them, whether it's meetings, so installation meetings, at practice, practice review. But again, goes back to some of your guys' first questions. Like our guys watch more film. Like that's something that like this receiver group does that is very similar to what it was at Auburn and what it was at Boise and some of my other stops, because like these receivers live in the office. Like I cannot kick them out of the office at times. And so it makes some of the installs and things like that easier. But it's the spring is trying to evaluate the depth of your room, trying to start to develop roles for certain people, and then trying to build your core plays and your core things that you do on both sides of the ball. And then you can tweak week to week throughout the season. Hey, we might run this same concept that we've run for 7 months, but we're going to put a little eye candy motion on it. We're going to do it out of a different formation, different personnel grouping. But the spring is a little bit more vanilla on both sides of the ball so that you can really grow your players' skill sets and the little things. And I think that the more successful teams are the ones that do that all the time. It might be kind of repetitive. It might be the same tackling drill that kid's done since his freshman year, but we have to tackle well, and we've got to control the line of scrimmage. And then specifically on the perimeter, we've got to be explosive with the ball in our hands and create separation. But it is, how many times can I do a drill in maybe a different way to not bore the kid, right? Oh, I kind of saw something on TikTok, or I saw something on Instagram, or something popped up. It's the same kind of drill. Okay, well, let's try it. We might tweak it a little bit. Let's try it. Something to kind of keep the older guys hungry as the spring goes on. But you're going to get your core, your meat and potatoes developed in the spring.
Awesome. Yeah, people kind of forget about it. They saw the spring games coming up, and then you got summer and then fall camp. But it's sort of it's a different kind of thing.
Yeah. Coach, we got to touch on this because it's one question that you have a unique background in. You've experienced both of them. You've been at both locations now that are very well known for their field, with Boise and Eastern Washington. What is the okay? So players were so used to playing on green grass, and this is it. You go on a blue turf, you go on a red turf. What's that like for the coaches, players? Is there an advantage that comes out of this?
I think if you wear, again, it sounds kind of simple. If we're on defense and we're wearing colors that are more like the turf we're playing on, we think that it gives the defense a little bit more of an advantage, right? The more red that we can wear on the red, the more blue we could wear on the blue. I think you get into a rhythm being on it, and so it doesn't like pop your eyes every time. But then if you ever aren't on the field for a couple weeks, or you're away, you come back from vacation, then it pops. But it's the first thing that family, friends, anybody ever says, or other coaches and recruits, like, oh my gosh. And you're like, oh yeah, we are on the red, like we are on the blue. But it's unique. And I think it's really cool. I mean, I think it's really cool because now people on the East Coast, if you have a conversation with them, hey, we're Eastern Washington, it's Cooper Cup, it's the red turf. Oh, okay. Like, I got you there. So we view it as it's a really unique recruiting tool for us because it helps us stand out a little bit with guys and with families and stuff like that. But it definitely, heck, even like in practice, if the defense is wearing red and you're like, gosh darn it, we're doing an interception, and the quarterback may say like, I freaking lost him. Hey, he's in red, he's wearing red in practice, like I lost him. And so there are some of those kind of things. We don't like to say that it's an excuse on offense if we throw the ball to the other guys, but it's different. But I think it's a really cool experience. I've had guys though, so like when I show like install tape or whatever, the receivers here, whether we were at Auburn, it's like, man, my eyes are jumping back and forth from, I got red installs with Cooper Kupp, and then you want to show me, some of the Boise stuff, and then it's the Auburn grass. And so if you're looking at it like that, it screws with your eyes a little bit more than you see it every day. You get a little bit more used to it, but guys still seem like, does the defense have 10 guys? Nope, there's the 11th guy. He's kind of hiding back there in the red. It's unique. It's unique.
That's awesome. Yeah, especially when we were looking at this, I was like, oh yeah, Eastern Washington. Oh, right. So, yeah, it's the red field. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of unique, what's it like coaching in an Iron Bowl, especially at Jordan Hare? I mean, it's a whole different. I think people don't understand. Like the Iron Bowl, obviously, is a big deal. But what's it like being on the sideline, having to coach and keep your emotions in check to get everything done right?
I would say you're almost more stressed out the week leading up. Like when that game finishes the week before, I mean, it is on for those 6 days of preparation. And I think you got to make sure that you don't freak yourself out during the week, because you know that it's like a bigger than life experience, because you walk into a Walmart in Auburn, Alabama, and somebody's family is from the west side of the state, and you wear Auburn stuff, they're going to say, Roll Tide, and they're going to, talk about Toomer's Corner and burning, killing the trees and stuff like that. And so that week of prep, you're so paranoid that you're going to miss something, that you're not going to prepare for something. You're watching more film than you would any other game that you're ever going to coach in. And then, the mystique of it on the 2 Saturdays I was a part of it, it truly is something else. Like, it's hard to put into words, because it's not a 60-minute game. It's 365 days. These people, I mean, you could go 2-9 at one of those schools, but if you beat the other one, it's a successful year in a sense, if you have a chance to. And so just all the history of the game, and especially having Coach Saban on the other side when we were down there. I mean, you kind of know who you're going up against. And then, our first year, we hear all these stories, and you see the stories, and you watch the old plays and stuff like that. And then we are in a quadruple overtime game where we had the ball bounced the wrong way, and Bryce Young's pretty good and had a 98-yard drive to tie the game at the end of regulation. And then, they hit a heck of a whip route to John Mechie in the end zone. And so it's more gut wrenching, I felt like, to be in the quadruple overtime one than it was the second year when it wasn't as tight, because, I mean, you are a play away from winning the biggest rivalry in college football. And so it is special. That is something that truly, whenever I'm done coaching, however, like, that is something that is so special because of the history and the great moments in it. And then I got a really bad taste in my mouth because we didn't win at our place, and we didn't win over there the second year, and especially just 4 overtimes against Coach Saban and Bryce Young and Willie Anderson and those guys. And we had them. I mean, we were close, but it obviously doesn't count in that game, no matter how close you are. And then to be able to step back a year later and watch it this year, and to see the 4th and goal from the 30 in down there at Auburn, and you're like, the game produces the weirdest. I mean, it's the kicks, and now it's this play. This play will forever. That 4th and 30 completion will forever go down. It's like, man, what in the world is going on? I just remember, like, I'm watching by myself up here, by myself, because I wanted to watch the game, and your jaw's just on the ground, because you're like, holy cow, this rivalry had another ending like that. So it is it's special. It's really, really special to be a part of.
Now, go ahead, Fresh.
I'm just saying, like, we watch on TV, or you're in the stadium, but being on the sideline, going, like you explained, the whole entire week of, it's on you. What can you do? How far can you go to get ready for that ball game and make sure you're prepared? It's stressful.
And it's so when I was at Texas State, a lot of the staff had been at Ohio State, and so and my mom's a Buckeye, and so I get that rivalry game, but then you hear kind of the Michigan Ohio State thing. So like at Ohio State, they play the Michigan fight song in the office 24/7, like leading up to the game. At least that's how Coach Meyer had done it for them up there, and that's the same way for us at practice. The entire practice is Alabama songs over and over. I mean, you just want to like break the speakers by the end of the week, and you kind of, you understand it, and then you can just remember the little things in that game. Like there's a couple plays in that game, and Bryce had 2 fourth downs on the last drive, and they're like ingrained in my mind. I'm sitting in the box watching, and you're like, we're a play away from, that sticks with you a little bit.
Yeah, I bet.
So I'm a little nervous for you here, Coach, now, because like you said, your mom's a Buckeye, and she's going to watch this. And on tape, you just said that the greatest rivalry is the Iron Bowl.
It is. And
I don't know if you're going to have a home-cooked meal next time you go home.
I'm a little biased, and Mom's the biggest football mom in the world, and so I grew up watching Ohio State, Michigan, and all those games and things like that. But just to walk around, like I would walk around grocery stores or whatever with some of the other coaches and their little kids, and if there is an Alabama person and the little kid is wearing an Auburn thing, and adults will attack, verbally mock the little kids wearing the Tigers shirt. I mean, it's unbelievable. And there's like, your house is divided. You are an Alabama family, you are an Auburn family, and like that is it. And there is no in betweens. You pick at birth. Like you can't flop sides and do those kind of things. It eats at you, because then you're going to hear about everything that you do wrong as a coach down there, wherever you eat breakfast Sunday morning anyways, whether you're playing Arkansas or Ole Miss or whatever. Oh my God, that game, you hear about every play call that you ever were a part of for 364 days until the next one starts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand my sister, who's a Buckeye, is married a Michigan man, unfortunately. He's a great guy. Part of it, he's our legal expert on the station here. So, but again, for like you said, 364 days. Love being around the dude. There's one day of the year I still will be around him, but I have to also keep my emotions in check usually. I'm worried about you, man. I really am concerned about Mom right now, because this is.
I think the in-state part has a little bit something to do with it too.
Right.
Like
That's
the in-state, because like they're right. No, I mean, you are in the state. I mean, it is. I mean, Michigan Ohio State might be the second best rivalry. Only one rivalry has ever had opposing fans poison trees on the other one's campus. Like that, like just hearing and listening to some of the things that they did at Toomer's Corner a couple of years ago. And I believe the guy went to jail or whatever the case may be, when he confessed like on one of the podcasts like that. He was like, yeah, I was the one that poisoned the trees. Like that takes a different kind of fandom to do something like that. It's a little unique to say the least.
Right. Ours only starts off of fighting over the city of Toledo. So I guess poisoning trees and fighting over Toledo are two different things. So
yeah.
I mean, it's crazy here. It's, you take a look at these rivalries and what everything's going on with college football and how the landscape is changing. And I really enjoy talking about like your experience at Auburn, especially for something like the Iron Bowl. And one of the concerns like people are having with the expanded playoff that we're going into, we're about ready to go into 2 years of a 12-team playoff. Who knows what they're going to negotiate next to coming in 26. And I always think one of the lusters that they lose on it would be, you lose some of the rivalries. You're never going to lose, obviously, you're never going to lose the Iron Bowl, never going to lose the game. You're never going to lose Red River. But it was, one of the things that was sad about Fresh and I talking about this season was this was the very last year. One of our kind of like sneaky favorite rivalries was Bedlam. Bedlam's a great rivalry and will never be played again. What is a coach's perspective? And again, I know you're at the FCS level, but you hear guys talk about that. Is it worth it? Is the expanded playoff worth it? Is, where you guys fall in this whole rigmarole?
I think it's tough because I also think it's going to start to impact the FCS. Like it is going to start. I mean, you're having the James Madisons and the Sam Houston States move up, and there's conversations for some other schools to do that. But I think you hit it on the head. Like some of those kind of rivalries, it's the rivalries that people don't necessarily like think about, but it's all the in-state kind of rivalries. It's Oregon State, it's Washington State up kind of near us, and especially having kind of been around, the West Coast, you lose some of the kind of territorial bragging rights and some of those kind of pieces. And I think that's that's going to be the weirdest thing is you're playing on different sides of the country. I don't know how, I guess we'll see if like rivalries can develop like that, for two schools, a California school playing a school in the state of Michigan or whatever. And now it's Big Ten ball, but those fans don't interact with each other much and they're in very different areas. And, there's a difference between the West Coast and the Southeast to the Midwest to the Northeast. And so I do think I think it's weird. Like, I know that's such a generic word, but it is going to be weird not watching Oklahoma play Oklahoma State and not, having Washington play Washington. And I know some of those are going to try to stay, right? I know they're working on trying to make sure the Apple Cup stays and things like that. But it is weird. And also it's going to, I guess where it would start to impact us is in some of the recruiting battles and things like that with guys, because now we're playing in the same conference, but the kid from the East Coast is actually in our conference, but we're on the West Coast. Like some of that recruiting wise will be interesting to see how that develops and grows and how that impacts things. And with some of the financial pieces being the driving factor, right. That is one of the tougher things is that now that the financial piece is impacting some of the other things, right, wrong, or indifferent. There's some positives to it. There's negatives to it. But yeah, some of the things like you grew up watching, you're not going to see anymore. Like it's unbelievable that you're not going to be able to see some of those things, which is a bummer to the fans and the college football as a whole, is that you don't get to see some of those kind of things.
Right.
So, Coach, your time at Auburn, we're getting to the draft season, and obviously Bo was there your first year on staff. What did you see in his game that you believe translates to the NFL or gave him success that he really can keep building off as he moves forward in his career?
I almost want to say it's like he is a shortstop playing quarterback. And what I mean by that is he gets the ball out of his hands so quickly, he can throw from whatever platform, whether it's on the run, set up in the pocket, and it was great to see him have as much success as he had at Oregon, and his completion percentage continued to grow under what they were doing there. And he is somebody that can fit. He was more pro style a little bit for the year that he was with us, and now is a little bit more opened up for him at Oregon. But you want to talk about a competitor as well. I mean, he is one of the best competitors that I have ever been around, whether it's in a meeting room, playing basketball, agilities, and then especially on the field. Like he is a cool, calm and collected cucumber when you put the camera in front of him. But I mean, he wants to beat you whenever he gets a chance to. And he has worked his tail off, and he has developed so much from before I was around him, and then is the nicest guy around support staff and younger coaches and everything like that. Like there was never, hey, I'm Bo Nix and you're a GA or you're an analyst or, all those kind of things. Like he's first class in everything he does. And so I am really excited to see how he does at the combine, see how he does moving forward in the process. But it's somebody that I'm hoping that he continues to have a really, really good career as well.
And you can definitely see he had tons of raw ability there at Auburn. You guys have developed him there, and he's taken it to the next level. Just getting the right system, and he plays a gunslinger kind of on the loose, but he gets it done.
He does, and I think that he maybe pound for pound was the best athlete that we had at Auburn, and that includes some guys that are playing in the NFL now, or some guys that are going to have chances to go play. But I mean, he is the real deal as an athlete, and then people were always going to question what he could do if you had him in the pocket, and to see his completion percentage rise and his touchdown to interception, ratio head in a really, really good direction. And he is going to put in as much work as he needs to be successful at the next level in whatever system it is. Because when we handed him the brand new playbook, it was different than what he was doing for Coach Malzahn. It was night and day different than what he was doing there for his first 2 years. And he grew it, and he took it in stride, and he never questioned anything, and he just wanted to continue to grow and is, again, as first class. Like if you could have a roster full of Bo Nixes, then you're in a good spot as you develop whatever culture and environment he ends up in. He's special.
That's a fantastic review. I mean, a coach's son, obviously a kid who had a lot of pressure on him and had to perform, and playing at Auburn, you have it on your shoulders 24/7.
And Dad had played there, and I mean, he is as Southern as it gets, a Southern guy as it gets, and so it was kind of cool because it shows like, hey, I can go play in an area that I have never been at before, in a conference I have never seen, much of those teams before, and for him to come in, and obviously I'm not in the locker room, but it seemed like he was pretty well respected and well regarded by his teammates and by the coaching staff there, and so it just showed that, hey, he played in 3 very different systems while he was in college. And so that's why I got a lot of faith in him wherever he ends up here in about 2 months or so. I'll be buying a Bo Nix jersey for wherever he ends up, because I'll be excited to cheer him on.
So, Coach, being out on the West Coast, one of the topics that Fresh and I talked about this year was how great the quarterback play was out there in the Pac-12. And I think that a lot of times, we're located in the southeast part of the United States. A lot of love stays on the East Coast of things. They'll always say, SEC bias, East Coast bias, what have you. From your perspective, especially being out west, with guys like Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, DJU, Cam, and people forget Cam Rising sat out this whole year for Utah and was ridiculously good a couple years ago. What is it like being out on the West Coast, and what is the feel maybe this past year? And is there like this sense that maybe they don't get the right kind of love that they deserve over out on the west side of the United States?
I think you hit it right. It's a little bit of the East Coast bias, and I've been there and grew up a lot, on the East Coast and have coached up and down there. And I think that as the 7-on-7 game has continued to evolve, that has ended up a lot of California, Arizona, Washington, basically up and down. The West Coast has been a hotbed for quarterbacks, and it's the amount of reps that these guys accumulate when they are 7 years old to high school, middle school. I mean, they are doing so much more than they've ever done before. And then, offensively, for whatever reason, I don't know when it kind of started, but just being a little bit more open and spread and some of those kind of things on the West Coast. But, yeah, I mean, you go up and down. Michael Penix at UW is somebody that people might like him more if he wasn't left-handed. Like, I've read stuff online where people are like, oh, he's left-handed. It looks weird. As a lefty, I'm like, no, it looks really natural if it's, a left-handed guy. But I do think that maybe some of those guys went a little bit underrated or under the radar. And even like at our level, like we think that some of the best FCS quarterbacks are on the West Coast. And so now the hope is, especially as somebody that's on the West Coast now, is continuing to have them do well on Sundays, because they've shown that they can do it on Saturdays, and they've shown that they can do it on Saturdays against whatever the competition may be. And so, yeah, you're probably going to have a lot of highly drafted quarterbacks that come from the West Coast. And so hopefully that's kind of a sign to the country. You might have to stay up a little bit later on Saturday nights and watch some games from some West Coast schools, but it is exciting. It's cool, especially being out here now. The football's really, really good out here.
Well, I guess my final question is sort of, what's the outlook for your Eastern Washington squad this year? How's your offense look? How do the receivers look? How do you see yourself coming into spring, and what's your focus going into the fall?
Yeah, no, we're really excited. We bring back a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, and we bring in some high level transfers, some junior college guys, and then we signed a heck of a recruiting class. So selfishly in the receiver room, we bring back an All-American and somebody that we hope, knock on wood, when things are all said and done, his senior year, he will be in the same breath as some of the guys that have played before him statistically. And, Efton Chisholm is a guy for us that has a chance to be second all time in every category behind Coop here. And that's a really, really special deal. And so to be in that, if you're ever in the breath coming out of here with Cooper Kupp and Kendrick Bourne and Simba Webster, it's a special group. And we feel like we have an unbelievable quarterback room and a lot of talent on offense. And then defensively are making strides in the right direction there, and are trying to do a lot of the right things on the defensive side of the ball. And when we look back as a staff last year, we are in a lot of one-score games. And so now the challenge is, how can you find a way to win the one-score games? Because it's all, like we kind of joke, is that a lot of people view football as a 60-minute game. For us, it's 60 minutes of situational football. Like, it is just so situational as we go. And so we hope that with a lot of the experience and a lot of the snaps coming back, that we can kind of get over the hump in some of those games. And, our guys have been working their tail off, and we're excited. We've got about another another three and a half weeks until we start the spring. And then we get those 15 practices, and then, the course of a whole summer to get the things right. But we have the leadership in the right spots, and we have a lot of older guys coming back. And, whenever you have a quarterback, and we happen to be kind of spoiled because we've got a couple, but, when you've got some guys that can lead the show, good things are going to happen at whatever level, at whatever conference, and especially for us. So we'll have a couple more. The transfer portal is not quite done, and things like that, and especially maybe bringing in some more junior college guys in the summer, and then an unbelievable freshman class across the board. We're really, really excited. We're really excited because Eastern Washington is a place that's used to winning at a high level, and so for us, we compete for national championships here. That's the goal, and anything short of being in that competition for the Big Sky, which we feel like is the best FCS conference in America. And there was a handful of schools that played in the playoffs last year, and one that went and played in the national championship this past year. So we're battle tested, and we hope that we've taken a lot of our lumps in the past, and now we can kind of start to build on it from there moving forward.
Yeah, you're not lying. That conference is absolutely nasty, legit.
It is.
It's a gauntlet. It's a gauntlet to get through.
It's a gauntlet. Like, I kid you not. Like, we call it it's the SEC of the FCS, because it's there's some really good schools out in the Montanas and up and down the Californias, and Idaho's about an hour from here. Portland State as well. So we got our work cut out for us, but we wouldn't want it any other way. And we're excited to try to get Eastern back. It's been a little blimp of some years that aren't up to our standard. And so you can feel that every day we come into the office, every day we go into the weight room, you kind of feel a little bit of that edge, a little bit of that chippiness from the older guys that they aren't used to going through some of the past two seasons that haven't been up to our par. So we're excited to try to get the thing back to where the fan base expects it to be, and where we expect it to be as well.
So real quick, Coach, and I got two more for you from me. What matchup over spring? So you're in the wide receiver room, and again, I know you're all on the same team here, but I'm think that you're looking across over at the defensive backs coach, and you're going to say, I cannot wait to spring ball so I can chirp at the defensive back coach. You're going in individual drills, Chisholm. Who's the D-backs coach throwing up and you go, all right, we're going one-on-one with the great one right now?
Well, we got kind of a unique deal. So our corners coach, Wes Nurse, has a room full of some really talented guys. Darian Sampson is one of the older corners in the room that's known and been around the Efton Chisholms of the world for a long time. But then our safeties coach is a former safety here, played with Cooper Kupp. And so, he is about as Eastern as it gets. Wife played here, is the all-time leading women's basketball scorer in the history of the school. So he is about as Eastern as it gets. So we have some pretty competitive one-on-ones there. And to be completely honest, like we as coaches want to get there as fast as possible as well. Like we have some pretty competitive noon basketball games where we chirp about as much as we possibly can to each other, and especially because we're around each other all the time. But yeah, I think one of the reasons why especially the receivers here have had such a good history is that the older guys teach the younger guys how things are done. And so I'm excited to watch, the returning All-American, and Nolan Olm is another senior for us that's played a lot. I'm as excited to watch them as I am to see some of the younger guys who get to learn from them every single day of the year. And the younger guys get chirped at more in this receiver room and mentored and pushed, I guess, as gently or as aggressively as some of these older guys want, but the standard of the room's a little bit different. So yeah, I mean, we count down on the clock to win that first round of one-on-ones. One-on-ones is the first team pass period. Yeah, hopefully it's a reflection of how much the coaches want to go and compete and get after one another. Hopefully bleeds through to these guys, but yeah, one-on-ones, it's kind of showtime here at Eastern Washington, because at least when these receivers go up, they know the guys that have done it here. So it's never, you're never thinking about what would Coop say or what would KB say for something like this, but to be on the same field, to do it on the red, and you can click on the 2016 film and watch Coop do it. The receivers know when it's showtime in one-on-ones, it's time to try to put on a little bit of a show because of the history of the room. But yeah, this is like the month of February. January's all recruiting, and it's a lot of those kind of things. We're in and out of the office. February, the coaches are foaming at the mouth. We're chirping at each other. The players are chirping at each other in the weight room. Like, just let us get to when we can kind of put pads on and start competing a little bit.
Gotcha. All right, so I'm looking at the schedule for 2024. Give me real quick, is there two games that you guys have circled? Like, again, while every coach is going to say every game is important, we want to win them all. These are going to be the two teams on our 2024 schedule that we're just going to get up for.
Two, I probably had a list of 6 or 7, but no, the one that's always the one that always means a lot to us is whenever we get a chance to play the FBS opponent. And so last year we played at Fresno State, and we lost a game in double overtime, and they were just coming off winning the Mountain West the year before. And so for us, that's a huge chip on your shoulder game, because a lot of these guys weren't recruited by the schools that we're going to go play against. And so we get to kind of lean into that the week of preparation. And so for us, whether the guys would say it or not, we play at Nevada. And so that's our FBS game this year. So that'll be one that's a really good experience for our guys to get to go to Reno and play there. But also, a lot of these guys feel like they were overlooked by not necessarily just one specific school, but like when it comes to the group of 5 schools that we go play against. So Nevada would be one. Oh man, one other one. Both Montana schools, they come here this year, and that's one that I kind of learned in this process. Like, that's the one that's meant the most. Is both the Montana schools are always circled, and then the gold and black school that's about an hour from here at the University of Idaho is always one too, just with the proximity that's big. So I know I gave you 4, you asked for 2.
Love it. Love it.
But yeah, there's some that are circled for us, but we're gonna every game for us, we're gonna try to treat like it's the biggest one for us, because it truly is. And for us to get to where we want to go as a program, it's one at a time as we get going. And that's one of the nice parts about being a little bit older this year as a team, and especially like in the receiver room and offensively, we've got some guys that have played a lot of snaps that know what we want to try to get done later in the year isn't going to get accomplished unless we take care of business leading up to that.
Well, we appreciate having you on, Coach. It's been an absolute pleasure talking
Really
college
good.
football with you, man. Thank you for agreeing to come on, and really we wish you absolutely the best of luck. And Fresh, we're going to have to preview an Eastern Washington game this year, man.
I think maybe a couple of them on the slate we'll have to put in there, because this has been absolutely fantastic. A real dive into the knowledge and the life of a coach, and all of your experiences. truly, truly amazing and really, really cool. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
No, I appreciate it, guys. I had heard such good things about, and was able to watch some of the things that you guys have done. And anytime we get to talk about Eastern and we get to talk about FCS ball and, again, passionate, talking to two guys that are living in Jacksonville, Florida, wanting to talk about Cheney, Washington and things like that. And so it's a really big deal when we get to talk about, Eastern Washington on a national platform. And you guys are doing an unbelievable job. So I appreciate you guys. Let me hop on with you guys and talk a little college football in the hardest part of the year about, we are months away from kicking things off. So this is always when stuff starts to get a little antsy and things like that. So I appreciate you letting me vent to you guys about football because, we don't have any games to play on Saturdays yet. So it was a blast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. Hey, before you head out, hit that subscribe button up there. Get notified every single time we drop a new episode. It is the off season for us, but really we don't take very much time off. We're going to look to drop as many unique episodes coming up into the season leading up into the summer. Make sure you check out spinnablesports.com because the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of spinnablesports.com. Follow us on the socials. Leave us a like. Leave us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. If you love us, great. If you hate us, again, you've been listening to another episode of The Photo Finish. So I'm going to keep using that one there, Fresh. But thank you again to Coach McDaniels. We appreciate having him on. And we'll definitely be bringing you guys back in our episode very, very soon.
Everybody, every day is football season. Keep tuning in, keep enjoying, keep interacting. We'd love to hear from you any way possible. And with that, bye, y'all.